For this last little bit, I'd like to play a little bit of devil's advocate.
I believe that Williams actually heard Joseph Smith say they landed 30 degrees latitude. 30 degrees latitude, South America, that's 30 degrees north latitude. I always look for Native American support. The Ojibwa, they will tell you straight to your face, if you get one and ask them straight out, did you come across the west from the Bering Land Bridge? They'll say, no. We came from the rising sun. We came from the east. And we got here by boat. Joseph said, those are Jaredites. Cover them up. This has been smelted, guys, and that's where we find the exact characters matching the ancient transcript. It's the only place, and it's the Mi'kmaq language. There is nowhere on God's green earth you'll find that kind of stuff, except in the heartland of North America.
Welcome everybody to another video on the Stick of Joseph YouTube channel. I'm Hayden, this is my brother Jackson, and we are the Paul brothers.
Basically, we have an exciting series of interviews coming at you. In our search of archaeological and historical evidences of the Book of Mormon, we have been, connected with a lot of different proponents of New World geographic theories. And we are going to be talking to a man by the name of Wayne May.
Now, before all you Mesoamerican, South American, Yucatan Peninsula guys start freaking out and saying the Book of Mormon didn't happen in the Heartland. Okay, we understand that there are many different theories. Wayne was one of the first people that we got connected with and that we were able to set up an interview with. So we're starting with him, but don't worry, we're going to be diving into all the different theories and letting people, really understand the pros and cons of each of them. Eventually, we want to bring all these experts in to a roundtable discussion where we can have a civilized discussion, because there is a little heat in between these different schools of thought when it comes to Book of Mormon geography, which is kind of goofy.
And we believe that the diamond shines brightest with a black background.
So we show all of the theories and then we let you guys decide what you want to believe. We are super excited about this interview. We thought it was really interesting and cool, but there's so much more that we weren't able to get into. We had a 2-hour conversation with Wayne, but we want to have a lot more and we want to be at his place. If you guys want us to go to his place in Wisconsin, interview him in person, and have a full day worth of interviews and diving into his documents, his artifacts, and all of that, then you can help us do that by supporting us on Patreon.
There's a few different levels of support, or if you would like to just make a one-time donation to our channel, the Holy Scripture Research Foundation has graciously agreed to accept donations on our behalf that are actually tax deductible. And you can find the link to do that in the description. They have a Venmo set up and everything, and any donation would be greatly appreciated.
All right, Mr. Wayne May, thank you so much for coming on. And we're super excited to dive in because as I was talking to our mutual friend, Tim Ballard, he was saying that there is nobody in Heartland Archaeology when it comes to the Book of Mormon that knows more than you. You were saying that you went on a tour with him and you were kind of his counterpart on a tour just a few months ago, or I guess last year.
Well, I guess the big surprise came, there's things I've been talking about for a long time, and I realized that Tim, and the show where we've been before at the other conferences, Tim will come in as the night speaker, so he's not there during the day to hear all the other speakers. So I realized there's a lot of material that Tim had not seen before. And so as I spoke to his people that we had on the tour group, he was right in there with them as much as anybody else was. And I just realized that there was a lot of stuff that I have been talking about he wasn't aware of. So him and I had a private meeting, and I kind of brought him up to speed real quick. So,
well, we're excited to have you here. And so we're going to start off just simply, why do you believe that the Book of Mormon happened in North America?
Boy, that's
a big question, right?
Yeah, I mean, it could go about 5 or 6 different ways, but I think probably the best way to really approach it is stay with the scriptures. And what happened to me, I joined the church in 1970, and through college, it was my senior year, and through college, I was I delved into antiques. I was selling antiques to help pay for my schooling. And I went to an auction.
Okay, cool.
Just 3 days after I got baptized. And a guy up there, he held up a box of books. And I'm at the back, and of course, I'm waiting for the furniture. I had no interest in the books, no interest in the kitchen stuff, the household goods. I want the furniture because that's what I was after.
Yeah.
He holds up his box of books, and I got to tell you guys, I was at least 100 feet away, but my eyes just shot straight up, and I could see the back of a book, and it said Book of Mormon, and it was old. And right away, I got the whole box of books for
Yeah.
$6. So I went up there, I pulled this book out, and I said, "Here, sell the
Okay.
box again. This is all I want." And that's my book. I don't know if you can see that. Okay.
Okay, cool.
All right. Now,
Yeah.
what I
So
had here,
how old is that Book of Mormon?
this one is 1888. My treasure in here, I would not realize for 18 years. 18 years will go by before
How
I
so?
appreciate what I had, because new member of the church, I'm learning the gospel, I'm learning everything, how to be a priesthood holder, etc., etc., etc. And I'm not worried about archaeology. The church says it's in Central America, it's in Central America. If it's in South America, it's in South. It was okay. It wasn't important. It was the spiritual. I converted the church spiritually. It had nothing to do with archaeology, and I have to make that very plain to people.
Yeah.
Total spiritual conversion. I had a terrific witness, and the testimony I received, I wish I could take it and give it to all my kids, because it was powerful. That's another story. But the point is, this book was the key to what I'm doing today. That's my whole point. Now, let me tell you the story. 1879, the Book of Mormon, for the first time, the brethren and the prophet decide it has to have references in the book. 1879, it's the first time. Prior to that, no references. All the references come out in 1879.
And you're talking about like footnotes, right? Like as you're
Footnotes,
reading.
yeah, right on the actual page, footnotes.
Yeah, footnotes.
And when it talks about
Yeah.
the land of liberty, it'll look at the bottom, it says North America. New Jerusalem's going to be built in the land of promise, North America. Or it'll say United States. And this goes on. But now, to be fair,
Interesting.
it also mentions a couple of things about where did Lehi land? He landed in South America. Okay? What's happening at this time, the early brethren, they're looking at, now Joseph has told them a lot of things, and they understand it, and they're all one hill guys, by the way. That's very important. I'm a one hill guy.
Yeah.
Okay? They're all one hill guys, but they're looking at the entire Western Hemisphere thinking, okay, land south is here, next Panama, North America, etc., etc. So they're hemispheric guys, but yet they're putting the majority of all the stuff from the Book of Mormon into North America, United States. Very few for South America, but it's there.
Yeah.
Now, here's what happened. Bear with me on this, okay? We have this guy, Frederick G. Williams, scribe to Joseph, okay? He writes on a piece of paper that Joseph wrote down. I'm trying to remember. I think it was in the Doctrine and Covenants. It was Section 7, 1829. Joseph had wrote this out on a piece of paper, and Williams turned this paper over on the backside, and he wrote down this thing about Lehi's landing on 30 degrees latitude. Okay? 30 degrees latitude. And because they're looking at a Western Hemisphere model, they went straight to the south and found the 30-degree latitude, which is in Panama. In Chile. And then, of course, above that is the other place they put in for the other landings, etc. But the point is, that's how that started. So then the whole thing kind of starts growing on the history and the archaeology of where is the Book of Mormon. They're still one hill guys. Very important.
Yeah.
What do you mean when you say one hill guys?
For people who aren't familiar with this argument.
Well, okay, one hill guys believe everything happened in New York, Palmyra, the whole battle. Not just the plates being discovered, but the battle took place there. If you support Central South America, they have created another Cumorah in Central and South America. Okay? Because they say everything.
So you're saying that there's that one hill, the hill you're talking about is the hill Cumorah, the same hill that Joseph got the plates from.
That is correct. Okay. The battle took place there. It all ended there for the Jaredites and for the Nephites. But for the two hill people, it ends in somewhere in Central America. And they've got 4 hills selected, by the way. They don't know which one. They can't figure it out. But they got 4 picked up, right? So that's what's going on. So that's the big argument. The hills. So then Moroni would have had to carry those plates, approximately a 60-pound weight, 3,800 miles to get up to the state of New York and to bury him for Joseph to find 1,600 years later. Okay? So, going back to that parallel. Moving in the 70s, the boys at BYU Anthropology Department, they figured it out, they laid it out. The handwriting on the piece of paper was not the same as what Joseph's, so they knew that Frederick Williams had written this on his own. So the whole thing has been blown out. So they removed all that, say, well, he had to come in somewhere in Central America. Now that's gospel. That's been changed by the Anthropology Department, okay? The paper, it's not correct. Williams wrote it on his own. However, now here's the kick. I believe that Williams actually heard Joseph Smith say they landed 30 degrees latitude. And why is that? Because when you look at, you can see this, 30 degrees latitude, South America. See North America? That's 30 degrees north latitude. In Florida is the oldest Hopewell in all of North America. And the Hopewell are the only ones that match the Book of Mormon timeline for a North America setting. I think Frederick G. Williams was telling
let me just
go ahead.
Okay, so let me just understand this correctly. In his journal, he writes down that Joseph Smith said that Lehi landed at 30 degrees south parallel, right? What you're saying is that he misheard the south part, and it was actually 30 degrees north parallel.
That's partially correct. I think Joseph just said 30 degrees latitude.
Okay.
And because he has been with brethren talking about a Western Hemisphere, he went straight south to South America. Where's that 30-degree line? Because Joseph just said 30 degrees. He didn't say south. He didn't say north.
30 degrees. Okay.
He said 30 degrees.
Interesting.
So it could have been either.
That's exactly right. The Hopewell begin in Florida. That's my point. And the Hopewell are dated by non-LDS archaeologists 550 BC to 400 AD. I mean, guys, the time fit here is, it's tight. So the Hopewell, for me, there is nobody else. It's Hopewell all the way.
With this Hopewell civilization, what do you believe is the most compelling archaeological evidence that the Book of Mormon happened in North America?
Well, if you read starting in Alma, about 43 to 45, talking about the wars, usually the place everybody skips all that. It's boring. But in that, what everybody skips, they talk about how they dig ditches. They throw up banks of earth. They put a wooden palisade on the top of those banks of earth, and then they put towers. And then they have a thing called the place of entrance. One way in, one way out. And it's built like a maze. There is nowhere on God's green earth you'll find that kind of stuff except in the heartland of North America. Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, southern Wisconsin, southern Michigan, western New York. That's where you find it. You can go there and you can, I tell people.
So what you're saying.
You can walk where the Nephites walked. You just got to go into Hopewell country and do it.
So for those who don't understand, if you go in the heartland of America, you'll find these weird little mounds. And there was kind of like an archaeological gold rush early in America's history where people were excavating these mounds. And we're going to get more into this, hopefully, and I'm sure we will. But that is what you're talking about right now, is those embankments, which, Alma 30:43, chapter 43, how early on, like where is that in the timeline about that they start doing building those mounds?
Captain Moroni, it says, he begins to fortify about 71, 72 BC. He fortifies all the cities throughout all the land. Now, here's another interesting point that I show in my lectures. Non-LDS, and I have to stress this, non-LDS guys are doing the work for us. So they can't point to us and say that we're planning to deceive, right? Because these guys have no skin in the game.
Making it all up.
The data out there from Ohio and West Virginia, they have examined caves throughout the whole area. And reason for that, because as the water drips down through the cave, it collects the rainwater for centuries. Just like you go into the Antarctic or North Pole and you dig a core of ice, you can tell what the snowfall each year is. You can tell by what's carbon's in the air. They can tell that around 100 BC, the Hopewell people had polluted the whole Heartland area. And why is that? Because they fortified all their cities with wood palisades, because the forests were there. And what do you do with the junk leftover bush and the treetops? You burn it. They burn it. It was smoke. They're telling us the whole area was polluted with smoke. Right when Moroni says they went and started to build and fortify every city throughout all the land. The scientists are backing us up for smoke pollution in the heartland of America. I think it's awesome.
Have there been any of the wooden palisades? Have they been found intact, or have all of them been lost?
Okay, the vast majority are lost, but there are some they have found. And here's another kick, and this will touch into our Jaredite. Everything here is so interrelated, guys. Okay.
Yeah.
The archaeologists go down and they leave what's called a post mold. Normally it's just a stain, a round stain, totally gone. But once in a while they'll find one that went down by fire. And because it's been burned around, the wood now has been protected. And they can get a date on that. And the dates are falling 100 BC, 300 AD. All across the board. Book of Mormon timeline. Wonderful. But here's the real surprise. On the big geometric earthworks, they've done the work, and they're looking at them and say, well, this has to all be Hopewell. And so they've gone down and they found enough wood. They're starting now to date the big geometrics, and the geometrics, they claim, matches Book of Mormon timeline, about 100 BC, the Hopewell began building all this massive earthwork stuff, which again, that's one of our dates. It's perfect. But what's so interesting, as they do the dating, they're finding dates of 200 BC, 275 BC, 375 BC. Wait a minute. That's not Hopewell anymore, guys. That's not Hopewell. Who built the geometrics in 375 BC, or even earlier than that? Jaredites. The culture in front of Hopewell is called Adena. They're finding now that these huge earthworks called the geometrics were not built by the Hopewell, built by the Adena, built by the Jaredites, remodeled and used by the Hopewell because they had the same calendar layout for solstice and equinox, and it was set up on a moon cycle of 13 months. What do we have out of Israel for a calendar? 13-month moon cycle. These are all on moon cycle. Lunar. Both the Adena and the Hopewell, both the Jaredite and the Nephite. And this is all new within just the last couple of years. And the archaeologists are just going, oh man, this is crazy. Now, one group of archaeologists I want to give credit to in the state of Indiana, they're the only ones that have picked up on this, and they're the only ones telling the American public these massive geometric earthworks that have been credited to the Hopewell are not Hopewell. Adena built, Hopewell remodeled, Hopewell used. Nobody else in the heartland of America is talking about the earth. They're all holding on to that Hopewell. They don't want to let that paradigm go. They're just holding on to it. And it's wrong. But that's okay. They'll get there eventually. They'll get there. But the guys in Indiana, they're breaking the mold, and they're doing a great job. Great job.
Some of these earthworks, the geometric earthworks you're talking about, one of them that's kind of famous because it was in a Netflix series by Graham Hancock called Ancient Apocalypse. It's the Serpent Mound, correct?
Yeah,
and we talked a little bit about this on the phone. Tell us a little bit about the Serpent Mound. Does that fall under that same like Adena culture, Jaredite culture, and then was later adopted by the Hopewells? Is that what you're talking about?
Well, it's even worse. It brings in a third culture. Let me tell you what's happening. All right. The early boys, they hit it right on the nail. They had it right. They claimed it was Adena. Well, that's our Jaredite timeline. Then along comes today, and I don't know if I should say his name. I'm just going to say the head archaeologist for the state of Ohio. He goes up and he cuts a trench through the Serpent Mound. And oddly enough, which we wouldn't find out until later, he hit a gopher a gopher hut. Now, gophers are known to pull stuff in from all over. They're like a pack rat, if you will. Well, he took the organic material from that and dated it. It came out to 1200 AD. So he has tried to change the date now on the Adena Serpent Mound to what's called the Fort Ancient Culture people, who were here 12, 1300, and 1100 AD. They're a real group of people, post Book of Mormon. He puts it now in that timeline. And then we had a guy come behind him, another archaeologist, and redid the dig, and he put the date back to 800 BC. Heading back toward the 1200 one they got on the first dig. So the Serpent Mound right now is really in a big turmoil. And everybody's arguing, and that's where it's at. That's what goes on here. And the younger guys like to change stuff from the older guys, and it's really unfortunate. By the way, did you make it up to the Indian Point when you called me about Kirtland? Did you make it up there?
Unfortunately, we couldn't that day. No,
well,
we wanted to, but
had you done so, you would have seen just what I was talking about. Because when it's called Indian Point State Park, it was not called that when it was first discovered. And that's what I mean. They're changing names. So when you read the old books, you say, well, where is this? And it tells you how to get there. But then when you get there, all these names are changed, the dates are changed, and it's a mess. It's just a mess. And they need to leave things alone. The old boys were right.
It's so interesting because, I mean, everyone just wants to be that guy that discovers the new thing and then stamps their name on it, right?
That's right. That's right.
But my curiosity is how easy is it, and how much bureaucracy do you have to go through to actually do the excavations of these mounds? How many of these mounds have actually been excavated archaeologically?
About 5%.
5%.
That's it. Everybody went after the burial mounds. People did not touch the earthworks because they figured if you're going to find treasure, you got to go into the burial mound and find the treasure. And so the earthworks really just started about, I'm going to say, 89 to 90, 91 by the group out of the Cincinnati, the archaeology team. And they were the first ones that came forward and say, hey, look, we found post molds in the Pollock earthworks. These post molds were sturdy logs encircling the fort, and it went down by fire. The first time we now are looking at these earthworks as maybe they're defensive and not ceremonial. All the earthworks in Ohio have been declared ceremonial. When you go up to the hilltop and you're up there and you're looking down at a 600-foot climb at a 45-degree angle, are you telling me this isn't a fort? I mean, come on, guys. And you got the breaks for the towers, the thing's 3 miles around. I mean, it's crazy. They're not ceremonial. They're forts from the Book of Mormon. The early guys said they were forts. The Indians told them they were ancient forts from a people that we don't know who they are. And then we come along in the 60s and 70s and say, these are all ceremonial earthworks, and because of NAGPRA, we're going to let the Native Americans have all these, and they can go there and do their ceremonies. You know what? When you've got Native Americans, and nothing against Native Americans, but when they claim an earthwork in Ohio as being part of their culture, they are partially correct, but they don't know how they're correct because they don't know the story of the Book of Mormon, that you have two groups of people fused into one, you see? But they're claiming it's just them, it's been them only, all the way back since the beginning of time. And that's where the rub comes in. So it's a big argument.
Yeah, and it's so funny to me that there's such like a visceral reaction from those on the anti-Book of Mormon, anti-LDS side, saying that there's all these things that we haven't discovered archaeologically, either in North America or South America. But if you look at the tiny percentage of the sites and the things that have actually been properly excavated, is next to none. And so there's still so much work to do.
So I want to ask a little bit more. I want to dig in. Let's dig in first to the Hopewells. I want to kind of get the Hopewell because that's the first part in the Book of Mormon, even though the Jaredites and the Adena culture, that comes earlier on in the timeline. But let's dig into the Hopewell. First off, where does the name Hopewell come from? Because obviously, where does that name come from? Because a lot of people might be listening and be like, well, it's not Nephite. So
that's right.
So please explain that.
I'm glad you asked that. Okay. Up to about 1890, now we've taken down, I would say probably even 50% of the earthworks have been leveled by 1890. It's a shame, but it's just through urban sprawl and farms.
God.
It's just happening. What we have today is about 10% that's left.
Yeah.
Okay, but even with that, it's still a lot. Okay, but here's what happened: 1890. Finally, the Smithsonian gets on board, and they say, "Okay, look, guys, this stuff's everywhere. It's not going away. We got to do something. Let's find a place that is virgin, hasn't been screwed up. We're going to go in. We're going to do it the right way, and then find out what this is all about." So they pick a place, a farm just south of Chillicothe, a little bit to the west. It's called the North Fork Earthworks today. And it happens to be owned by a guy by the name of Mordecai Hopewell. So they go to Mordecai's site. They do the mounds. They do the earth berms. They put all the dating plugged in. So here's all the templates now we want everybody to follow. When you find these templates, you're looking at Hopewell. Got it? And so the point is, whenever they work a site, whoever owns it, that person gets their name attached to it. And I always make a little pun at
Why did they pick Mordecai though? Mordecai is such a cooler name than Hopewell. The Mordecai people, that would have been way.
People won't know who Mordecai is. He doesn't show up in the tax rolls, but Hopewell does. You know. So, but I make a little funny. I say, people. I said, and once they realize that, they all kind of. I see a little bit of a rumble through the audience by saying, "Hey, look, what if this guy's name would have been Mordecai Nephi? Today we'd have the Nephite culture in North America." I mean, you know, that's how close it is. That's how.
Dang it.
Yeah, dang it. That's right. So keep plugging.
Okay, that's cool. So now explain where are the earliest. I want you to explain your theory, the Heartland theory, from the beginning. So after they leave Bountiful, where do you believe they land? Why do you believe they landed there? And then what is the evidence that is, you know, the Nephite people that we read about in the Book of Mormon?
Well, starting out, as I did, all I saw were the mounds and from end of Alma. I started in the middle, kind of like in the Book of Mormon, because we didn't know about the other stuff. But today we now know from academia that the oldest Hopewell culture is called Deptford Phase. The Deptford Phase. The Deptford Phase covers most of Florida, a little bit of Georgia. That's the oldest Hopewell in North America, period. 550 BC. Now, running a close second to that, and this is very confusing to non-LDS archaeologists, Iowa and East Tennessee have dates just a little above Florida in age, but they're still extremely old in the 500 range. Well, not a problem. Where did the Mulekites land? The Mulekites came into the land north, which for me is the St. Lawrence River, excuse me, and they end up in what will become later on the land of Zarahemla. They're living, and they won't be found until Mosiah, around 130 BC approximately, is commanded by the Lord to leave the land of Nephi, which is north of Florida, in East Tennessee. And he travels into Iowa, and they hook up. So here we got that pocket. You got the pocket in East Tennessee, and you got the pocket in Florida. And all the dates coincide with the Book of Mormon in that 600 to 500 BC range, all three of them. The one in Iowa is problematical for the archaeologists. They're saying, how did the Hopewell get there so quick? How did they make that big jump? You see, well, they didn't have to because it was two groups. That's the point. Mulekites in the north, Lehis in the south. Helaman 610. Very, very easy. Now, the Ojibwa, Native Americans. I always look for Native American support. The Ojibwa, they will tell you straight to your face, if you get one and ask them straight out, did you come across the west from the Bering Strait, land bridge, the Bering Straits? They'll say, no. But we know when those people showed up. We came from the rising sun. We came from the east, and we got here by boat. Sailed into the St. Lawrence Seaway. Settled along the way, we dropped people off, but the bulk of our people settled in the Great Lakes of North America. That's what they'll tell you, but you won't find that in any American history book. You got to talk to the natives.
Well, Wayne, it's because people, they weren't that advanced, obviously. They weren't smart enough to be able to build boats, Wayne. Get with the times, all right? No,
I
that's
know.
like one of the goofiest things. Like that's one of the things that bothers me about all this is just like this soft bigotry of low expectations. You know what I mean? Of just like
Yeah,
there's no
I do.
way they could have done this because of whatever. I feel like we think we're so advanced and we're so much smarter than we really are.
Yep.
And I really believe that the ancients, were much more advanced in many ways than we are.
Yeah, and Wayne, if you could speak to with their, I guess, origin story, what's their kind of timeline that they give on that? Is there any at all?
They can't give a timeline on that. They just say it was very, very long ago. I mean, they don't have any sense of that. But here's what's interesting. The
A long,
Potawatomi,
long
which
time
were
ago.
cousins to the Ojibwa, they're all of the Algonquin family, by the way. The Algonquin family is the core, a real core of Nephite, Lamanite leftovers, okay? So the Potawatomi will tell you, we remember when the yellow race came into this country. We remember that. And they came from the West. And he says, I've got cousins who favor those people because we mix together. We mix, we accept it. And he says, I said, how do you tell the difference? He says, very easy. My cousins from the West, they all have the epicantic fold, which is Mongolian. And it's just the way it is. It's an ethnic marker.
Yeah, yeah.
But those of us who come from the East, we have round eyes, just like you do. Got it? They'll tell you that straight out. And it's no big deal. I got cousins that favor my people from the West. I got cousins that favor my people from the East. It's okay. It's okay. But they'll talk that to you straight out. And one of the best things I like, I was in Minnesota in 1994 at a men's club giving a presentation on just basic archaeology. And I showed them what's called the Michigan tablets with the Yod He Vav, the mystic symbol. And when I finished, a Native American came up to me and he says, that symbol, the Yod He Vav, it's cuneiform, by the way, 3000 BC over in the Euphrates to 1000 BC when it stopped being used. But here it's in America. He says, that's our stuff. And so the question is, how did that stuff get here? He says, well, we're not sure, but it came over. We've had it in our Medewan Lodge, and it's part of our culture, and it's the name for creator. And we write it to this day. And you can take that Yod He Vav symbol from the Ojibwa to any guy who is Orthodox Hebrew, Orthodox now, not a Reformed, Orthodox. And they'll look at those markings that are cuneiform, and they'll say, Yod He Vav. That's the name of God. But it's not complete. It's missing the fourth syllable. But I don't want to say that out loud because that's not nice. Okay?
Yeah.
All right? So how did
Yeah.
that get here? How did that get here? Another good one. Barry Fell in the 1970s. Not an archaeologist, professor of biology out of Harvard, Yale, that kind of schooling, a bigwig. He takes the Mi'kmaq language and he looks at it and he says, holy mackerel, this Mi'kmaq language is matching Egyptian language 2,000 years ago from Egypt, Egyptian hieratic. And he compares them. He finds about 21, 24 matches in the characters. And I post that in all my talks. Mi'kmaq. And where are the Mi'kmaq today? They're up in the Maine to New Brunswick, Nova Scotia. And there's a reason for that because that's the story of Hagar. That's how they got there. I don't know where you guys want to go. So it's hard to just talk about one thing because everything touches each other. Okay.
I know there's so many because it's all interrelated. It very much
It's all interrelated.
Okay, let's get back to the Hopewell. I want to ride the Hopewell train.
Okay, well, let me tell you about
where do you believe that the Nephites landed?
Okay, it landed in Florida.
Nephi and his brothers and.
So what happens? They have the separation, right?
Okay.
It says they separate. Well, if they're in Florida and Nephi leads, he can either go northeast or northwest or north because he's right there on the coast. Well, when you jump up to East Tennessee, that's where we find the next center of Hopewell, just around 500, 550 BC. They're in that same time area as Florida. Remember, carbon dating is not exact. There's always a 50 years plus or minus, or maybe 100 years plus or minus. But the point is, they're in the same area. And what does he do? He says, I'm going to build a temple to the Lord. Now, here's the thing that'll really blow you away. 37 to 39, A lot of flooding in the Tennessee Valley. The federal government says, okay, we're going to build dams all over. We're going to stop this flooding. And so the farmers had to make sure they're on the high ground, and they took care of that. But that whole Tennessee Valley is covered with Hopewell and Adena burial mounds. They allowed academia to come into the Tennessee Valley and dig anywhere they want without even asking, because everything's going to be underwater. It's going to be gone.
Covered in water.
Underwater. So they went wild down like kids in a candy store. I mean, they were digging everywhere. But up at a place what will be called the Norris Dam area, become the Norris Dam Project. They dig down a Mississippian mound, and now these guys build mounds on top of each other, just like in Israel. We call them tells, one on top of another. Mississippian layer, a second layer was an earlier Mississippian layer, and they got to the bottom layer of this mound. They uncovered a Hopewell Mound, and in that mound, they found a rectangular structure laid out with posts that they could still see. Piles of stone inside that were all collapsed, and they're whole stone, not carved. That also is a sign for ancient Hopewell and Book of Mormon, which I'll tell later. They find all this. They don't know what it is. Some guy saw something that he was curious, and they went and got a hold of a guy in London, England, an Egyptologist by the name of Rendell Harris. They gave Harris all this information from this strange building in this Hopewell Mound. He comes back and says, it looks like the first steps of an Egyptian temple. A temple in Tennessee? Really? Interesting. These guys could have very possibly uncovered the very first temple built by Nephi, which today is under 60 feet of water. Very possible. I mean, he called it, and then he goes on, he said, not only is it potentially Egyptian, he says, look at the names. Tennessee is an Egyptian word. Tenna means land of, Esi means Isis. Tennessee translated in Egyptian means land of Isis. And then all the rivers are Egyptian names down in Tennessee to the south. I mean, this guy just went on. An Egyptologist out of London. Do you find him in our history books? They couldn't get this guy back to England quick enough. They couldn't get him out of here. He was wrecking the paradigm of North America.
So where do you find this information? Like, is it in a book? Was it documented? It was probably before photos were taken. I can't remember what time you said, but there probably weren't any photos taken. Were there drawings? Like what?
I got photographs. I got the stuff.
Oh, you do?
I got it. It's in my documentary.
All right, well, you're going to send those over to us, and we'll throw them
I'll
up on
send
this
you
video.
about 15 DVDs. You're going to have to go through them all because I can't do it all in an hour. I mean, it's just, guys, it's everywhere.
I know.
It's got a lot of watching to do.
I don't know what people are doing in Central America. Why are you going south to Rio Grande? It's all here. It's all here. Now, let me tell you this. Here's what's really cool. Okay. The Nephites knew how to build boats. In North America, the waters were way deeper and wider. Book of Mormon timeline. And geologists will tell you that. And we can see it because all the big Hopewell constructions, they have causeways for protection going down to the river's edge, and they're all short, 100, 200 feet before they hit the shoreline of today's water level. You understand? There's a big gap. The water was higher. So what do we find? Do we find the boats in Heartland? No. They're all gone to rot. If one got buried in the mud, one could be discovered. However, what we do find, anchors. How many anchors you want to see, guys? I can show you 100 anchors from Wisconsin to Florida.
Actual
anchors. And the anchors are made the same as in the Mediterranean. Just a piece of a limestone, no special shape, with one or two holes punched through it. That's it. And they're all over the Midwest. Anchors, because they were sailing around the Midwest. What does it say when they left Zarahemla? They took lumber and they sailed up to the land north because they had no trees up there because it was nude. The land had been denuded by Jaredite building previously. They're sailing throughout the Heartland. It's obvious. Got anchors everywhere.
So what you're saying then is like, let's say, for example, when it talks about the narrow neck of land, right? That could have been some place that water has now receded and that obviously the geography looked a lot different. Or because when I hear like the Heartland theories, I just think of like, oh, the Great Lakes, like the land between those, but are you saying that it could have been in a completely different place, but water has just now receded?
Yes, because it tells us the destruction was the most in the land north. So let me just qualify a little bit. However, the neck at Niagara is a strong contender because Niagara in Algonquin language means the narrow place. And that was written in a book prior to Book of Mormon being published. Joseph did not make that up, see? The Indians protect Joseph of what they tell us. And that's why we got to look to the natives. We get all these great stuff that backs up the Book of Mormon. However, there are other places that could be the narrow neck. And I also believe that the narrow neck and the narrow pass are definitely two distinct locations. And I'm going to give you my best shot for the narrow pass. All right. Archaeologists have done the work here, and geologists. If you look at Lake Erie extended all the way into middle of Indiana, which is a long ways. It goes to Fort Wayne is where it ended. And that was called, when the Europeans saw it, our people coming in, the Great Black Swamp. It still existed. Now, what I just found out, and I found out from a member of the church who was a geologist, retired out of Oregon University. She called me up and says, Wayne, I've been watching you for years. I've just retired. Now I can help you. I'm going to give you a piece of information that I know you don't have because I've watched your lectures. She said, you've got the Great Black Swamp to the east, but very few people know about the Great Marsh that came off the bottom of Lake Michigan in the west. When you extend the Great Marsh and you extend the Great Black Swamp, the narrowest I can get it right now is about 70 miles across. It could have been narrower. Hard to say. But what's interesting in both those places, they tell us they're full of the 3 poisonous serpents in North America, snakes. Even when the Europeans first got here, the Great Marsh now had receded back up in towards Chicago, but the Great Black Swamp still existed. And that's why we know it dates in the Book of Mormon timeline, because they've done the work for us. They found datable material in the swamp built by man, and they tell you straight out that was here at 100 BC. That Erie extension came all the way down in 100 BC. And it became a bypass. What's interesting, in the land north, when the Jaredites talk about fleeing the serpents, the poisonous serpents, and the Lord hedged up the way to close off that path, they make a great verbiage that they said, traveling from the land north, we traveled into the land southward where we go and do our hunting. And then right at the bottom it says, oh, by the way, this land southward will be called Zarahemla. Key point, because Zarahemla, they're headed right into Illinois and part of Indiana. And that's where Zarahemla is. It's beautiful. Oh, I didn't hang up my phone. Sorry about that. Hold on.
No, it's all good. Don't worry about it. So if I understand right, what you're saying, the parameters of kind of like the Nephites before. So you're saying the parameters are from Florida all the way up to the Great Lakes region, and that's all the way up to Niagara, actually.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. And from western New York to eastern Kansas. Here's what ties them together. Now, people always say, oh, Wayne, the weather up here, it's too cold. Now, see.
Yeah. That was one thing I was going to ask, is like, why isn't there any mention of the terrible ice storms or anything like that?
That's right.
I mean, there's no mention of weather, really, and I think that's one of the reasons why people believe it happened in Central America, because it's, even though there's rains and things like that, it's a pretty steady climate. It's always kind of how it is.
Not a problem.
You know?
I can blow it away. It has to do with Hagoth. Hagoth is your answer.
All right.
I love Hagoth. He's the man. Now here's the deal. I'm trying to think where to start. There's so much here. First of all, Kansas to New York, Wisconsin to Louisiana, for some reason, whether it was sacrificial or it meant something spiritually, we don't know. But guess what kind of bird we find in the Hopewell burial mounds? Parakeets.
I wouldn't have guessed that.
Because America, all the way across the middle of this country, the weather there was just like Florida today. It was semi-tropical. A lot of people, and here's the answer for that, okay? if you look up Little Ice Age,
Yeah.
1200 AD it begins, and it goes solid till about 1350 AD. If you can imagine a whole latitude of cold just dropping right down, changed everything, but not during Book of Mormon times. And here's we know that. Our Vikings come into play. When the Vikings first came over 900 AD and through that 1300 AD period, okay, they're living on the very edge of the Arctic Circle. If you were to go up there today, now you can only go through about early April till probably the 1st of August. The only time you can get through what we call all that ice up there today, because it's all ice today. But if you sail through up there, and I've got photos,
Yeah.
you will see buildings built by the Vikings, and they had hay, and they had cattle, all living just at the very edge of the Arctic Circle. But starting 1200 AD, that cold line began to drop. Climate change, it moved them, and all the Scandinavians had to move to the east. They went back to Baffin Island and eventually ended up in Iceland, and some of them stayed behind and mixed with the local tribes. That's why we know the cold line dropped. And now you go follow that latitude, you go across to the other hemisphere. England, and this is a surprise for everybody, the monks in England up until 12 to 1250 AD grew the best grapes in all of Europe. They made the wine. The vineyards were there. They weren't in Italy. They weren't in Spain or the south of France. They were in England. But all that froze out between 12 and 1300 AD. And that's when they all moved everything to the south of France and the north because of the big change. And exactly 1250 to 1300 AD in that time range, no more castles in England, Scotland. They couldn't heat them. They turned into giant ice boxes. No more castles. The cold line is real. Nephites had wonderful warm temperature. And they also had seasons.
Okay, so
there's no seasons in Central America.
Yeah, have there been any I know it's kind of hard, and I don't understand exactly how it works, but I do know that they're able to do tests, core samples, things like that to see what the climate was like, hundreds of years ago. Is there any hard scientific other than just historical evidence of this change of climate?
Well, I mean, the change is obvious because of what happened. I mean, the birds lived here, the parrots were here, the parakeets were here. I mean, I don't know what you need to look for. Other than
the parrots
that.
is kind of the big evidence.
Well, yeah, and that's a big. How is that possible?
And how far north did the parrots live?
Well, they're Kansas all the way to New York. Middle America.
Okay. Wow.
Did they were up in Canada? I don't know. I don't know. But they were here in big numbers.
That's
the parakeet
crazy.
Did not disappear.
And you mentioned seasons.
Yeah. We had seasons.
Why is that little tidbit of seasons important?
Well, because you've got they had the 4 seasons, just like we do today. They had rain, they had sun, they had spring, and all that still took place. In Central America, what do you have? You have summer or you have rain. You have summer, you have rain. There's nothing in between. There's nothing else. It's not there. Bingo. Book of Mormon talks about seasons of the year. And it talks about during certain seasons, they had to have the medicines because they got sick sometimes. And that came out of herbs. And that's another story, the herbs, that's really good. And one thing that's really interesting, too, about that, the seasons for North America, they talk about the migrating beasts, how the beasts would go north and south and travel back and forth. Now, it never uses the word migration. It just talks about the beast traveling, okay? And the Lamanites would follow them for food, back and forth, okay? Central America, South America, have no migrating beasts. They're not there. Only in North America.
Really?
Beasts travel. Only. Anybody worth their salt, an animal husbandry will tell you flat out. No migrating beasts south of the Rio Grande. They're only in North America. And there's our buffalo. Voila. And they know.
Makes sense.
They just found out in Illinois. I mean, we're only talking maybe 5-8 years ago. They didn't know what these people were eating. They couldn't tell. What are they eating? And finally, they found enough bison with Hopewell points stuck in them, in the bone, they realized the Hopewell were living on the bison. And people don't realize when you see the movies from Hollywood, you always see the buffalo out west of the Mississippi. Well, the buffalo herd east of the Mississippi was just as big. It was a cousin to that one. A little bit smaller guy, lived in the forest, but the buffalo herd here was big. And I always tell this story. I live in Wisconsin, and I'm very close to the Mississippi River. And just south of me is a town called Mondovi, Wisconsin. Mondovi, Wisconsin, the Mississippi has a shallow place there. Well, before the dams and levees came, they had a shallow place there. You could cross. Every fall, guess who showed up at Mondovi, Wisconsin? Buffalo. They were crossing the Mississippi there, running back and forth, north to south. And because of that, that area is called Buffalo County today, to commemorate that, because they witnessed that. Well, the buffalo were still running when the first Europeans came in here. Of course, that was gone very quickly, but they witnessed it. They were still traveling back and forth, back and forth.
They destroyed the buffalo.
I love the buffalo. Yeah. The buffalo, little guys, I don't know if anybody has any buffalo of the eastern type that still is alive. I know the western we do, but I don't know about the eastern. And maybe they do. I just don't know for sure.
So let's kind of break down some of the bigger cities in the Book of Mormon, and I want to hear your theories on where these cities are. So first off, where's the city of Nephi, and why do you believe that that's it?
Okay. I can't pinpoint cities exactly, except for Zarahemla for sure. I can pinpoint Zarahemla because of the temple site, which I started working in I found in 2010. I started working in 2015. We have validated a large rectangular foundation that is built Hopewell construction. And what's really interesting, it is practically dead on to the Nauvoo temple. I mean, door to door. And I find that extremely symbolic.
Really?
Father is symbolic. You got the major water. Mississippi, by the way, is my Riverside, Mississippi. And let me just
Mississippi, Riverside.
Mississippi in Algonquin is Nami-Sipu. Nami-Sipu means river of fish. Okay? River of fish. Nami-Sipu. Sidon means, if you translate it, means fish, fishing, fisheries. I mean, it's a fish word. Sidon is a fish word. You could say Sidon is a river of fish. That means what it means, and that's what they call it today. And we have a second source for the Native Americans that come in from the west, which are the Delaware, and they also call it the river of fish in their own writing. So that's cool. But the point is, this temple lot, which I worked, and once I got that all done and excavated, we have verified the size of it. We could see it electronically around it, but people still refused it. And then Dr. Kevin Price came in out of Lawrence, Kansas, expert, one of the first earliest experts with LIDAR and all that type of reading. He could see by looking at the vegetation. You see, different soils are going to allow vegetation to grow, let's say, stronger, weaker, medium, ochre, that kind of thing. So when you got a rectangle of sand, and outside of it you had good soil all around it, the vegetation left a huge footprint. And you can see the coloration. It makes a block. Same plant. If you're standing there physically, you can't tell the difference. Same green plant. But because of LIDAR and all that new technology, you can see the coloration, the chloroform that's in the plants, and it puts off colors. Rectangles there. He validated it for me. For me, that was a frosting on the cake. And it's done scientifically. Because a lot of time the boys...
What are the dimensions of this rectangular foundation?
About 88 by 144. That'd be the outside block.
So it's pretty big.
Besides the temple. The temple is going to be smaller inside that. Because the mound itself has been...
Inside of it. But it's simple to how it was built, both with King Solomon's temple and the temple during the second temple period. It had that outer courtyard and then the temple on the inside.
Well, yeah, and again, it also is encompassed by walls. In the Book of Mormon, all the temples had walls around them, and the walls are there. The only missing is the north, because actually it was a bigger courtyard area than what we're used to. But it's been knocked down. I can't help that. But the berms are there, and the berms are old. We found a tree in the southwest corner, black cherry tree, and we had it cut down professionally. and we had it professionally looked at to count the tree ring. It's called dendrochronology, accepted in archaeology for dating. The tree is in the 1600s.
Yeah.
No white man in Iowa in the 1600s, guys. The earliest one would be a Jesuit priest and probably a guy hunting beaver that might have come down the Mississippi very early. Nobody's planting trees on the berm
Yeah.
in 1600s. That's my point. That berm has been there for a long time, and it's around my temple site, my square, my rectangle. It's beautiful. Okay, now
Okay.
land
So
Nephi.
that's where you have Zarahemla.
That's Zarahemla, and that's really the best one.
Yeah. Continue.
I would say that, and I would only be a best guess. That my best guess for the city of Nephi would be what's called Stone Fort, Tennessee. And again, the guy, it's just purely a guess. There's nothing to tell us this is the place. But Stone Fort, Tennessee is built very, very well. It's solid Hopewell, and it's big. And there's a lot of Hopewell in the area. One thing that Tennessee has that nobody else has, and because they have it, I think it's been overlooked. When you go to Israel, at this same timeline, if they buried a loved one, many times you dig your hole in the ground, you lay a slab of limestone on the bottom, and you put up limestone slabs along the sides and the ends, right? And then you're going to put a limestone lid on it, and then you cover it over. Okay? Only in Tennessee do we find burials of limestone slabs, which tells me that Nephi and his people were still imitating everything from Israel. They weren't building that many mounds at that early time, but they were. And at Nashville, Tennessee, in the old books written by Haywood, he said these limestone boxes were lined up side by side, and they ran for over a mile. One continuous line for a mile long.
Goodness.
Can you imagine?
Do they still exist? Do they have the limestone boxes somewhere?
The early pioneers sacked them all because they weren't very deep. They just popped the lid and whatever was in, they took it. Yeah. Nobody else has boxes.
So, but the actual boxes themselves, do they exist?
I can't say for Nashville. I've got one in Illinois. And on certain of my long tours, I do show that. As a matter of fact, I lay down in the box and let people take pictures. I'm in the box.
Yeah.
The top lid is gone, but the sides are all there. But as far as Nashville's, I can't say. I don't know if they preserved one. I really don't know.
Cool.
But
yeah. Okay.
Now, remember.
Cool. So
what does Nephi tell us when he builds his temple? He finds copper. Very important. And gold and silver. He talks about all that stuff. And as soon as you say that,
that was actually my next question.
It goes out to the west. It goes west. No copper, no gold, no silver in the east. Well, that's baloney. The state of Georgia puts out almost as much gold as Kennecott Mine. Surprise. Silver is there also.
Yeah.
I was worried about copper because we got copper all over in the UP, and I knew that people in Zarahemla would certainly know about the copper in the UP. But how would the Nephites, that whole first 600-700 years running back and forth getting copper, they would have bumped into the Mulekites much earlier, but they didn't. So where's the copper? I got called up by a gal, Cherokee gal. She said, "Wayne, I'm in East Tennessee, down by Morristown, and I got petroglyphs in a cave. If you're ever here, I'm inviting you to come down and see them." Well, I said, "Hey, I'm on my way." And that's what I do. I jump in the car, I'm gone. So I drive down, I find her house, takes me in the cave, wonderful petroglyphs. We come out of the cave, and I just look over into the tree line, and I can see dips. All over, and the ferns are growing unevenly. And I said, "Well, okay, so why do you have all those dips over there?" And she said, "Well, those are the ancient copper mines."
That's amazing. So I want to ask, because I was going to ask this right before you brought it up. What are because you hear, like, one of the biggest issues, right, is there doesn't seem to be any metalwork, any fine metalwork up in North America. There's no breastplates, there's no swords, there's, like, Talk a little bit about some of the
Just look away.
archaeological
Keep talking.
evidences you have found in regard to metalwork in the Heartland. Let's get into that.
How about if I show you?
Yeah, how about you show us?
Best.
All right.
Here's a metal plate. I know you can't see the details on
Uh-huh.
it. I'll show you how thin it is. See
That's
that?
way thin.
I had it tested. It is not modern copper. I've got the data from a lab.
Okay.
I've had my stuff
Yeah.
tested.
What is the
Copper plate. This is out of Michigan. They can't date. Just can't date the raw metal.
Yeah.
Can't date it. Okay. But the writing on here, oh, you're talking Book of Mormon timeline, older. It's incredible. I got Egyptian on here. We got Phoenician on here. And we got the Yod He Vav on the cuneiforms up here on
Really?
top. I know you can't see that.
Yeah.
It's just.
We'll have to get a high quality photo
We
of
got to
it.
find out where the camera is.
Wow.
See. Well, that's right. Wish you boys were here. And then I got. How's this?
Okay. Wow. That's like a huge spearhead, or it could be.
Okay.
Or
Now look at
maybe
this.
if you throw
Hold on.
a hilt on it.
Wow.
Look how thin that is.
Yeah.
This has been smelted, guys. Smelted. Native Americans did not smelt.
So we're told.
And academics, they say, oh my gosh, smelting? You got to be kidding. You got to be kidding.
Yeah. And that's copper. Both of those are copper.
Where's the camera here? Oh, yeah, solid copper.
Okay.
See, I can't find the camera. Oh, there we go. There's the camera. See this guy here? This guy's not only smelted and formed, but it has blood channel. Can you see the ridge up the middle? See the ridge right up the middle? Okay, the ridge? Well, here, this is concave. It's concave.
Mm-hmm.
See, when men first started making stuff, this would be totally smooth. And the problem is when you put this into a man's body, your body is a vacuum and it grabs onto it and it's hard to pull back out.
Mm-hmm.
So when you do a blood channel, you stab somebody, then the blood can run out on the drain. It's like a drain.
Mm-hmm.
Then you can pull it out and stab them again real quick. Blood channels.
There we go. You're speaking like a Marine,
And this is out of Wisconsin. This is out of Wisconsin.
Yeah, that's why our bayonets, the bayonets they
it's
issue us in the
Wisconsin.
Marine Corps, they have blood channels as well.
Some of
Make
them.
it easy. Yeah.
Absolutely, you have to.
Yeah.
You have to. If you stuck a guy without a blood channel, you're gonna have a heck of a time getting that out.
Yeah.
I mean, it's gross, but that's the way it is.
I know.
And then we got stuff, we don't know what it is. We got weird. Let me hold this back, I guess. Weird stuff. This here has that mystic symbol, the Yod He Vav.
Yeah.
See the cuneiform? That's cuneiform.
Yeah.
Any Orthodox Jew can read that. Because I've tested it over times. I've been with the guys. I pull out an artifact with this on. I say, what is that? And they, oh, that's Yod He Vav.
Where do you find?
It's the name for creator.
Where are all these artifacts found? Are they found in controlled digs? How do you have them? Because a lot of people are probably asking, well, how do we know that Wayne didn't get someone to make these and fake it? So where were these found?
The majority of what I have comes from it's been passed down from one collector to collector. My great-grandfather had them on his farm. The next guy has them. They keep them for a while, and then he dies, and they go up in auction. They're sold.
Okay.
You can't dig anymore. You get arrested.
Yeah.
That's the point. You get arrested. Okay. So, but some of the stuff, sometimes we will find. We will find this one right here, the big one. This guy here. This comes from a Hopewell Mound in Ohio. It's called Sipe and Seep.
Yeah.
They go nuts when they see this because it's huge. It's huge. Mm-hmm. And then this would have had a handle on it. Down here. To slash and I don't have one here, but I've got guys that have actual swords that are 22, 23 inches long, all made of hardened copper. I've got photographs in my talks that I would show. I show all this stuff.
Yeah.
But let me show you one more good one. One more good one.
Okay.
Let's see. This guy. Yeah. They tell you there's no smelting in.
Yeah.
This is so good. Okay. This right here is clay.
Okay.
This is clay. This is iron. This is an iron axe head still in the clay mold.
Really?
This was found at Chillicothe, Ohio at a furnace site.
Interesting.
Okay. Now, let me show you what's really even better about this. See this little knot?
Yeah.
That tells us they had a portable crucible, and this hot iron metal was poured into this mold. It was
Mm.
poured in, and this is where it went in, right there,
Wow.
Chillicothe, Ohio. Yeah.
Awesome.
And you talk to regular archaeologists, they said Indians, they didn't smelt. Well, yeah, they didn't
Mm.
smelt, but the Nephites did,
Yeah.
you
Has
know.
the clay been carbonated on that? Because I know you can carbonate clay.
No, I haven't touched this. I just it's so to have one of these. There isn't another one of these I know of anywhere in any museum. I don't want to hurt it. Every time you get something tested, it gets hurt. But it's something I could do. I could probably drill a hole, and or not me, but the lab. But
Yeah,
that's
the
something I
lab and
could
get.
do. So anyway,
Yeah, that would be
when I do
interesting.
my lectures, if we're there for a couple of days, I usually bring as much stuff as I can to show people
Yeah.
because
Do you
they
have
need to see
so?
stuff. It's here.
Yeah, and I know it's difficult because with ancient antiquities, a lot of them found in the ancient Near East and things like that. A lot of them have to have certificates. There's documentation of where it was found, who found it, when it was found. Do you have any of that
Right.
for any of those artifacts, or is it like you said, just things that have been passed down from farmers and things like that?
Okay, the normal artifacts that are by Hopewell, that you can get documented all the time. That it's the same timeline, like the pipes, nice
Uh-huh.
arrowheads, spear points, all made out of flint. All that can be documented. Hopewell timeline, not a problem.
Yeah.
The problem when when something weird like this shows up, the archaeologists won't even touch it. And the archaeologists are trained. If you find something that doesn't fit our paradigm of
Yeah.
Columbus only, you rebury it when you're done. It doesn't even come forward.
What
Honest
a
to God,
good
that's what they do.
policy.
They rebury it.
Well, yeah, I've
Just
looked at
rebury it.
there is
Ignore it.
weird stuff. Like, well, I don't want to get too conspiratorial, but I have seen
I
a lot
know,
of
I know.
interesting stuff. Like I told you about this book I was reading about kind of Meriwether Lewis of Lewis and Clark and kind of the interesting journal entries he had about things that were found. They talked a lot about bones that were found of giant human beings that were, between 7 and 10 feet tall. And there are pictures
That's right.
and verified articles, thousands of them, not a couple, but a lot of them. And they were all given to the Smithsonian, and then you don't hear anything. I don't know all the details about that,
No,
but I know you have done tons of
yeah,
research. To me, it seems like there's some weird stuff that goes on when it comes to archaeology in North America, and a lot of it seems steeped in.
yeah.
And I'm a patriot. I love America. I think this is a great place, just as you are. Um, I have seen, though, and I think you would probably agree, that maybe some of the reasons why the archaeology was manipulated early on and why it's continued is because it's easier to occupy a land from a different people if you just think they're a bunch of savages that aren't smart enough to do
That's right.
anything of a modern
That's right.
civilization can do. Am I kind of
Yeah.
landing in the same ballpark you're in?
You are, and what you touched upon is called manifest destiny. You see, we have the right to do what we want, take what we want, go where we want, and the Indians are just that. They're not even second class citizens. They're not even considered citizens.
Yeah.
It's awful.
It's
You're
crazy.
right,
Like
Parker.
the more I've looked into it, and like I said, I don't want to get too conspiratorial on it. But when you look into the institution of the
Yeah.
Smithsonian, there's some things that definitely just aren't normal that happen. You know what I mean? Where
Right.
there
Yeah.
are claims that they make where they don't have receipts. There are tons of receipts
Hmm.
laying around in ancient newspaper articles, pictures, or not ancient, early newspaper articles, pictures of things, and then you ask the Smithsonian, and they're like, "We have no record of this." And there's just really interesting stuff. Let's kind of get into because as far as I understand, you believe that many of these large skeletons that have been found dotting the United States belong to the Adena culture. Is that correct? And
Oh
that would
yes.
that would make them Jaredites. Talk a little bit about some of these skeletons that have been found that are of extremely large stature.
Let me cut right to the chase and tell you the best one. How's that?
Okay,
Because
let's
I'm
do
going to
that.
be there on. Let's see. This is. I will be there this Thursday. I've got permission to
Okay,
go on this private property and do what I'm going to tell you. Okay.
perfect.
Um, this would be about 2 years before Joseph was killed. Joseph's farm, I don't know if people realize, but a lot of people lived in Nauvoo, but their farms were outside around Nauvoo. So you would go out to work your farm. That way you had a good social life going on in the city. That's why they did it that way. And it made a lot of sense. So he goes out to his farm, and he had to pass by a guy by the name of Baum, B-A-U-M. We just call him Father Baum. Jacob Baum was his full name. And here Jacob had a hog pen. And there had been some talk in town of some stuff that Jacob had found. So he goes, he stops at Jacob's place. And this is all in Jacob's diary, which is in the church historical office. I got this out of the church history office. That's great. That's so awesome. Joseph goes up. He says, Jacob, I heard some talk about you found some strange bones. He said, well, he said, I didn't. My hogs did. So it had to be kind of level. Otherwise, there would have been a big mound. He would have known it was a burial. He just said, my hogs were just out there rooting up the ground, which hogs do. They want to wallow in the mud and make a dirt path. So he said, but they dug up some bones. And he said, and I looked at the skull. He said, the skull was huge. He said, it was bigger than my face. Jawbone went around my jawbone. It was big. I took it in the house, showed it to my wife. My kids were scared. And I came back. I don't want all this stuff. And so Joseph showed me. So he takes Joseph over to where they are. Now the hogs have been moved out. So here they are, where they've dug up. Joseph looks at the bones, and recorded by his daughter, Joseph said, those are Jaredites. Cover them up. Don't let the hogs bother them anymore. Now,
Joseph says this
here's
to
the
Jacob?
Rest of the story.
Joseph Smith?
Yep, recorded by his daughter in her diary. Now, here's the rest of the story. Jacob describes how they're buried. They're in a circle, heads pointing to the center, and they're laid out like spokes of a wheel. 12 guys, spokes of a wheel. I can take you to Indiana, Michigan, Illinois, Florida, and I will show you Adena burials. 12 guys laid out spokes of a wheel. It's a match. And they're called Adena. And Joseph said, these are Jaredites. Cover them up.
Yeah, where does that name
I'm going to be there
come
Thursday.
Was that on Adena's farm? Did they find Jacob Adena?
There was a major mound.
How did they name him?
Yeah, there was a major mound just to the northwest of Chillicothe. It was one of the early ones they dug. And the guy who owned the land, he had a ship or a farm. I can't remember which it was, a ship or I think it was a ship. He was a boat guy, steamboat captain, and his boat was called the Adena. How he got the name, I don't know, but because of that, he called it was his Adena Mound, so they call it the Adena Culture. Surprise, right? That's how it got the name, Adena. They dug it up, and then everything came out, and all big guys, 7-8 footers, Adena.
Are any of these skeletons that were reported, are any of them available to actually look at today, or if all of them, or is the story that all of them have been taken by the Smithsonian and we only have pictures and written accounts?
Well, I would say a lot of them have been given to the Smithsonian, but most of them, they were just left by the wayside, not taken care of, and just gone to dust and powder, just rotted outside the burial. I can give you an account at Osceola, Wisconsin, where they dug up mounds on a Sunday afternoon while they're having a picnic, and they put the skulls on fence posts for target practice. Shot them with their guns. Indian junk. Indian.
Yeah.
See,
that's the way that it was treated.
Sure. So I've got one nice one in Indiana that a dentist has, and that's on book number 3 of mine. No, number 4, excuse me. And that's on the cover. Otherwise, no, you can't see them. The ones that have gone to the Smithsonian is our best chance because they should be there in a box somewhere. And they'll tell you, now what I've gotten when I've talked to those guys, they've said, well, yes, we have this material, but we don't know where it is. So they stonewall you that way. It's not they don't say they've lost it, but we don't know where it is, so they can't show it to you. That's the
Yeah.
pat answer I get.
You said nowadays if you dig you get arrested. Is there organizations or I mean government organizations that are currently doing active archaeological digs? Is there a way to apply for the permits to dig? Is there any of that work actually going on, or is there too much bureaucracy that no one bothers to try?
There you can do a dig. When you apply for a permit, the first thing is it a site that the Native Americans have already identified as one of their mounds or what an area? And if they have, then you can't touch it. If they haven't identified it, then you could get a permit with an archaeological team to dig. You
Do
could.
the Native Americans, can they give permission? Are any of them interested in doing that? Like, or is it just if it's a Native American mound, it's no-go zone?
Yeah. Well, I've had the privilege of working with the Ho-Chunk Indians here in Wisconsin. The Ho-Chunk, by the way, you'll know this name better. The French call them Winnebagos.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
they go around on private land and get permission, and they just use technology and scan the mounds to see if they can detect anything. And they make record of it. And a lot of the mounds are sold. You can't detect much, but then once in a while you can tell there's actually a body stretched out there. You can see parts, part of the skull where the feet end and maybe a big femur. You'll see parts. It does show up in the GPR scans, and then they make record of it. So that's going on. Would they go and dig one up? No, never would. Never would. And they would probably hope you don't. There are many sites today. When we go into a site, I'm very cautious of this. There are sites that we call active. In other
Yeah.
words, there's Native Americans living nearby, and they still go to this site and perform ceremony.
Ceremonies.
Okay,
Mhm.
and out of respect for that, we don't linger there. We if we see it, then we leave because they go there on some kind of regular basis. And I brought a picture. I want to show it to you because I walked into a good one just this past week up in Upper
Yeah.
Michigan on Lake Michigan.
Cool.
I walked into a long causeway, stones on both sides, broke out into a circle, and there were trees standing around. Each tree had a wooden mask attached to it. And I got to tell you guys, it really freaked me out when I saw this. And
Yeah.
there it is.
Whoa. Wow.
You see that?
Yeah,
Four of
that's
these,
cool.
four of these circling the circle. So, I mean, this is not
That's
old.
scary.
I mean, it may be 50 years, but I mean, this is an active site, and I respect it. And I wouldn't even tell anybody where it is. I wouldn't take anybody there.
Yeah.
I walked into it by accident because I'm always exploring stuff. I find
Just
things.
walking
Okay,
around.
that's what I do.
Yeah.
So
Well, Wayne, one question I have for you, as me and Hayden have kind of gone about talking to different experts and self-proclaimed experts about Book of Mormon archaeology, we figured out that everyone has an opinion and it's a very strong one. And in like your, I guess, talking to these different people that represent these different thoughts of Book of Mormon archaeology, talking about like Central and South America, has there been any, I guess, discoveries or evidences put forth that you possibly give validity to, or what do you kind of think in regards to their evidences and theories that they put forth?
well, I got to tell you guys, I try to attach mine to the Book of Mormon through archaeology or through Native Americans any way I possibly can. And I look to the scriptures, and I don't see the scriptures supporting a Central America setting at all. And if in my view, as a convert to this church, if you read the Book of Mormon carefully, you don't even need archaeology. It tells you, land of no kings, the land or the nation of the earth will flow unto. It's a nation of Gentiles. Central and South America is still full of the same Indians that were there. The only Indians that got decimated were the ones that were here. Okay?
Yeah.
And the New Jerusalem will be built in the Promised Land. The Wentworth letter, Joseph Smith, standing in Nauvoo. Guy from Chicago comes down to visit him, the editor of the paper, and in there Joseph says, the native Indians that inhabit this country are of Joseph. Now think about that for a minute. I majored in political science, okay? When he says the word country, you can't say that unless you have boundaries, okay? Well, he's in the state of Illinois. He's in the United States of America, and he says the Indians that now inhabit this country are of the house, are of the tribe of Joseph. They're the lineage of Joseph. These are not Inca. These are not Maya. These are not whatever. Let me just show you this. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Hindu America. Okay. Over here, that's a Mayan temple. This is Angkor Wat. Okay. Starting in the 1840s, every 10 years, a major archaeologist or anthropologist has told the archaeological world that the Maya and the Hindu are connected. They're not Israelites. They're Hindu. I mean, I put this out, and the people
I guess
freaked out.
I could see that. The more I think about it, like the kind of the gods and everything that's put forth, like in the Mayan culture, very much kind of speaks that Hindu. I've been to India before. I've seen a lot of their ancient structures and stuff, and it definitely has kind of that Mayan feel. I never thought about it that way. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, here we got. Let me just read this real quick to you. This is this one here is 1849. These buildings, temples in Palenque, Mexico, correspond with the exactness of those in Hindustan, India. That's a scholar Raymond Mene called the Nahuatl, the Zapotec, and the Mayan language of Hindu origin. And then we've got down here Miles Poindexter does 2 volumes set in 1930s. The Incas called the Maya civilization in unquestionably Hindu. That's his 2-volume work. Hindu civilizations from 1940. Again, it just goes on, and every 10 years, a major work comes out and says, these guys south of the Rio Grande belong to the Hindu people, etc., etc. I mean, I don't know what they have to go on. There's not much.
Yeah, I totally get what you're saying. Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I kind of want to play for this last little bit, because I think people will be interested in this. I'd like to play a little bit of devil's advocate and kind of represent some of the points that we've heard from people that espouse kind of the Central South American geography model, and I want to hear your responses to them. So first off, let's start with the one that you mentioned earlier about the hill Cumorah, okay? First off, so you believe, so it doesn't say in the Book of Mormon that the plates were buried in the hill Cumorah. They were hid up in a hill, right? So your understanding is that there was a battle, Moroni wandered around for 21 years, and then he just came back to the same hill that battle happened, and he buried the plates there?
That's correct.
That's correct. Why do you think that he wouldn't mention in the Book of Mormon that it was that same hill? Like, if it was, he just says he hid them up in a hill. Why wouldn't he say that it was the hill Cumorah if that was something that was already established?
Well, of course, for him, it was hill Cumorah was understood. It wasn't. I mean, he knew what it was. The point is, I buried in the hill. What's Cumorah? What else would it be? But I mean, he's not. We're not there to ask him. Well, come on, tell us which one.
He refers to the hill Cumorah prior. He doesn't refer to it when he actually buries the plates.
Right.
And it seems like if he was,
but when he comes back to Joseph is resurrected, that is made very plain that the plates are at the hill Cumorah. And so there he is as a resurrected personage, taking Joseph where they are, and he refers to that is the hill Cumorah.
So as far as I understand,
there are many passages with Joseph
Yeah. So in Joseph Smith history, it doesn't refer to the hill Cumorah. It just refers to a hill as well. It doesn't say Cumorah in Joseph Smith history, at least in the one. So
Is there another account?
Yeah, is
That's
there
why
another
you.
account? What are you referencing?
Well, yeah, you have to go to all the diaries of everybody, especially his mother, who writes about it, and others.
Was she writing it
Going to the
as a
hill.
contemporary, or was she remembering? Because that's one question I had, because
Probably,
that's what a lot
probably,
of people bring up.
I'm probably remembering, but I'm not sure about that. But
Because
it's really, you read the early writings from all those people. Just take for example, I mean, to identify that, letter 7 that Joseph and that he commissioned Oliver Cowdery to write. He said, they talk about the whole fight taking place there on the hill Cumorah, at the nation of the Jaredites and the Nephites both ended here between the two hills, because there's a parallel hill, a mile across that kind of runs side by side. There's a parallel hill.
uh-huh.
So I mean that I just don't see it's just not questionable. And how would you? I mean, how can you go down south and say, well, we've got 4 hills, but we don't know which hill it is? You know,
Hmm.
they got 4 hills down there, and to think
Yeah.
that Moroni would walk 3,800 miles from somewhere in Yucatan, carrying a approximately 60-pound weight all the way up to New York, that gets a little testy. And then yet, when you read Journal Discourses, number 19,
Hmm.
Joseph and Oliver go into the hill Cumorah, and this is from Brigham Young. The hill opens up, they walk in, they see many plates that would take many wagon loads to carry. Well, how did all those plates get there? The hill's been used for a long period of time as a repository. And then I asked my Mason guys, well, we accept that. Well, I said, well, then how did all those other plates get there? They said, well, the Lord just teleported them all up there. And I said, well, if that's the case, why did he make Moroni walk 3,800 miles carrying a set?
Yeah.
Why didn't Moroni
I've
just
always
go
thought
with
that
him?
was goofy. Just
I
the
mean,
idea that it all happened
that's
there and
goofy.
that God just magically teleported them. Because to me, it's like the whole Book of Mormon
Right.
happened physically, and then all of a sudden this last little thing. So anytime anyone with the Mesoamerican model has kind of presented that to me, I'm like, that's super goofy. I don't agree with that. That said, I think
Right.
from the research that I've done, the idea that the hill Cumorah was the hill that Joseph Smith got the plates from was not really projected until later on, even just a few years before his death, and that it kind of got conflated as people read the Book of Mormon and talked about the story of how he
Mm-hmm.
got the plates, and they conflated them together. And even as far as I understand, Lucy Mack Smith's record was written retrospectively and not contemporary, and so the idea that she referred to that hill, the hill Cumorah,
Right.
could have just been her feeding into the zeitgeist that had cultivated throughout the years among the members.
Let me give you a scriptural reference, if I may. I
Yes,
showed you
please.
my book, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
so cool.
In this book, chapter 6, let me get my readers on. I have to use readers.
It's all right.
I'll just go to verse 2, okay? Verse 2. And then I'll try to, so you can see it, I'll see if I can hold it up there. Verse 2.
Okay, what reference?
And
So
I, Mormon, wrote an epistle.
this is
Oh,
Moroni
this
6:2.
this is Moroni 6 and chapter 6. Moroni chapter 6, and we're in where are we in here? Yeah. It's hello. Yeah, Moroni, it's just chapter 6.
Chapter 6.
Yeah,
Okay.
Book of Mormon, chapter 6. Book of Mormon, chapter 6.
Okay.
Verse 6.
Verse 2.
Perfect.
Got it? Okay.
Yes.
And I, Mormon, wrote an epistle unto the king of the Lamanites, and desired of him that he would grant to us that we might gather together our people unto the land of Cumorah by a hill which was called Cumorah, and there we could give them battle. Now, I'm not. I'll read you the reference. No, can you? I don't know if you can. You see the reference there?
Yeah.
I may have.
Or it's a little hard. Read it for us.
Let me read it to you first. Here's the reference. Okay, the hill Cumorah is in Manchester, Ontario County, New York. That's the reference. And this is in our scriptures. And this was here until 1919 when they took it out.
Mm-hmm.
I don't
And
know I can't see the control.
That was added in the 1890 version?
1879.
Or 1879?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, can you see that? Read that? See? The hill, can you get it? Cumorah is in Manchester, Ontario, and then down in there, County, New York.
Mm-hmm.
See?
Yeah.
It's all here. That's why this is my guy. I had this for 18 years, and I didn't know it was in here. Okay? Took it out. And the men who put these references in, most of them knew Joseph on a one-to-one basis. John Taylor. Now, before it was finished, Brigham Young had passed away, but he proved it. Taylor then proved it. Orson Hyde, the Kimball, both Pratts, and they all knew Joseph, and they put these references in there. These references should still be there.
Yeah.
They should still be there. That's my point. And they call it Hill Cumorah.
So as just so I just want to clear it up. So your contention is that it's Hill Cumorah because that's what it's written in the early references, and it was referred to by church leaders following Joseph Smith's death. Because as far as I understand, there's no contemporary accounts of Joseph Smith himself, his writing referring to it as the Hill Cumorah, correct?
I think that might be right. Others did.
But others did who were associated closely with Joseph Smith.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's correct. That's a good answer. I just wanted to, because I was curious how you would, because we've talked to other people that have that obviously believe different, but I think that answered it perfectly. Number two, one of the things that Mesoamerican people point to a ton is this like the written language. It is very hieroglyphic in nature, right? Which we know that Lehi and his family were learned in the way of the Egyptians. They were from the tribe of Joseph, so it's very hieroglyphic, even though it doesn't necessarily match in any way to Egyptian. And that just this written language is a lot more pervasive in the Central South American archaeology than it is in the North American archaeology. You've obviously showed us some artifacts that are claimed to have been written from the native tribes up there. What other things in terms of writing in a written language, what strong evidence is there in the Heartland?
Well, my first question, what language are you looking at that shows Book of Mormon ties in Central America? Because I don't know of any.
No, it's more of the existence and the fact
that they've got a written language, right?
Yeah.
Well, okay, understand. Well, first of all, Book of Mormon said if the Lamanites got a hold of our stuff, what are they going to do? They're going to destroy it. Excuse me. Now, when I told you about the Micmac, they have the actual characters that match the Anton transcript. It's the same. And that's what people haven't seen. And why is it in the state of Maine? And I'm going to tell you why it got there. And Haygoth is our boy. Okay? Haygoth builds his ships. All right? He said he sails north. Why? If my Zarahemla is right, he's building somewhere on Lake Michigan. He's going to sail right up Lake Michigan because they know the water routes. And he's going to go straight down the St. Lawrence, heading toward the Atlantic Ocean. When you track the DNA today, middle of the country, you're looking at probably 15, 20%. As you move up into the Great Lakes, it goes up into 30%. When you get up into the state of Maine and Canada, the Micmac natives are running 50% Israelite X2A DNA. Now, why would that be? It's because the people from Zarahemla are sick of war. It says thousands of people, 5,000 men and women leave Zarahemla on the first wave, and there were 2 or 3 other waves. They leave, and they journey off with Haygoth, and they follow Haygoth's path. Not just Haygoth, but they follow other ships, and they sail off in that same direction. Now, they get up to the Atlantic Ocean, they're going to take off. Not everybody goes. Obviously, a lot of them stayed. The fighting that's going to take place is about 250, 300 miles south. They're going to cross the major river to get there. They're safe up there, and they stay. And the DNA is there today, and that's where we find the exact characters matching the ancient transcript. It's the only place, and it's the Mi'kmaq language.
So
it's their
if I
language,
understand
and it is written.
Okay, cool. So if I understand correctly, what you're saying is Hagoth, he goes away. They settle up in the main area, up in the northeast, and they are able to, they retain some of that original language more because they were away from all of the destruction that later befell both the Nephites and the Lamanites. Is that, am I understanding you correctly? Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Absolutely.
That's super interesting.
And
I'm excited to
Phil,
look more into
Barry Phil, when he's, it's called the Book of Commandments. Their language was so complete. Fell said the early Jesuits, 1600s, they took the Mi'kmaq signs that happened to be Book of Mormon signs, and they wrote a Book of Commandments so they could teach Catholicism, or what they knew of Jesus Christ, to the Indians of this country. And that book exists today, Book of Commandments, and they can read it page to page. And it's the same markings as the ancient transcript. And then Fell says, this language, Mi'kmaq language, was written and in use in Egypt 2,000 years ago. Again, Book of Mormon timeline. Thank you, Doctor.
That's cool. That's cool.
That's wild.
Yeah. So, okay, that's good. So your explanation for the written language, much of it was destroyed because the Lamanites destroyed a lot of the Nephites' stuff, and the best evidence for an existing written language is the Micmacs, who would have been Hagoth, and you would have escaped the destruction that befell the Nephites. Okay, perfect. Right. So the next totally. Criticism or reason why people, as we've talked, believe in the Mesoamerican, South American model is because, first off, and I think you would probably agree on this, when it comes to the existing archaeological megalithic structures in Central South America, they're much more impressive and seem to match a lot more the megalithic structures that you would find in the Middle East, whether or in Northern Africa or Egypt or whatever. So it seems like the idea of building with stone and these huge megalithic structures that last millennia definitely matches Central South America than the earthwork structures in North America. What is your kind of thought on that?
Well, first of all, the Nephites didn't build out of stone; they built out of wood. It's very clear in the Book of Mormon. You got to watch that. They built out of wood.
Nephi, when they first get, I believe it's either at the beginning of Second Nephi or at the end of First Nephi, he talks about how he taught them in the manner of working with both metals, obviously, as well as stone. And so I think that's where a lot of people get that from, is that Nephi taught them how to build the way that they build over in the Middle East, which they don't use wood. They didn't use wood to build many structures.
Well, yeah, but show me one stone structure other than the walls or in Jerusalem and the mud houses. They didn't use that kind of architecture. They would never build a pyramid structure. They didn't do it. They left Egypt where the pyramid structures were, and that was wicked to them. Their altars are up on top. Solomon's altar was not on top of the Solomon Temple. It was out on the foyer in front. I mean, they simply don't agree. And I'm trying to think if I had another picture I was going to show you. Let me see if I can find it real quickly. Don't waste your time here. I don't know what I did with it. Anyway, most of the structures you see down there today are not in the Book of Mormon timeline. I'm gonna give you my best story, because this actually happened to me. I was on a dig, and I had an actual archaeologist who was a Protestant, by the way. It didn't matter if he was a Catholic or whatever, but he's a Protestant, and he was savvy to the story of the Book of Mormon. He understood what took place. He understood the timeline and how it compared with Eastern Hemisphere and back and forth. So we get rained out on a Sunday, and I said, well, hey, there's a church down the road here not too far. I'm gonna go skip into this ranch and go to church. So I get him to go with me, and he says, yeah, I'll go with you. So we walk into church down there, and right on the wall is that great big painting that you've seen 100 times. Jesus is standing on a stone staircase, people are all around him, and in the background is a stone temple. You know which one I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Does that ring a bell?
The classic. Uh-huh.
Okay, so we're walking past this image, and my archaeologist friend, he grabs me, he says, Wayne, you didn't tell me Jesus came twice. And I said, what? He said, well, that painting, that stone structure in that painting for Jesus, that's Chichen Itza. That was built 900 AD. I said, oh, yeah, okay. I'll tell you after sacrament. That's why I deal with that, you see, because he was savvy. That put him totally out of context. Totally. Because it doesn't belong there. There's nothing wrong with Jesus being on the stone steps with people, but if they're in North America, that isn't the place. There were no stone structures in North America. They did not build out of stone. They built out of wood and copper and earth, and they've all gone to rot. And I kind of think, thank goodness. Let me just pull it 1 second. 1 second. Let me just. I really apologize for that. I thought I had one, Eric. I was going to show you that, but anyway, the stone structures down there that they claim are Book of Mormon, and of course the big giveaway is all the staircases, steps. I think you know this, don't you? Steps are a violation of the law of Moses. You know all that. So every one of those pyramids have steps built on. And even if they were in the correct timeline, that means apostate Nephites would have had to build those stone pyramids because they never would have put a stone staircase on it. That was forbidden.
So,
Okay.
The last thing I'll ask,
Yep.
just to clear up your answer for it, is that the structures in Central South America, although they may be impressive, do not match a group of people that would follow the law of Moses. Also, many of them don't match to the Book of Mormon times, as well as you're saying that they would have built from wood or things of that nature, primarily the Nephites
Right.
and the Lamanites.
Right.
Okay. Okay, so
That's correct. And technically, they didn't have a forest down there to build decent wood structures, technically.
yeah, okay. Okay, the next question.
Yeah.
And this is one that has been one of the more compelling as we've talked to people of Central and South America. Really, the one thing that's been very compelling are the legends, various legends, either of the feathered serpent or the descending God. The Book of Mormon, it talks about the crowning event is Christ visiting the Americas. So what you would imagine is that if there's one thing that would have withstood time and would have been told through millennia after it happened, it would be the visitation of Christ. Now there's a few legends down south of the border that have some very interesting parallels. Are there any like that in the north? I actually barely bought a book about this. And it's very interesting. What's it? You saw it? Do you remember the
Christ
title?
in America.
Christ in America, written by a non-LDS person who later became a member of the church. I can't remember her name. It's escaping me, but
It was called He Walked the Americas.
He Walked in the Americas. Yes, I just barely got that book. Just started reading it. Very interesting stuff. To you, what is the most compelling evidence that Christ really did visit the Americas? Where do you think the land of Bountiful is, where he would have actually stood and taught and healed the Nephite people? Nephite, yeah.
Almost every Native American tribe here has a story of a special guy showing up. They all talk about him. I mean, every one of them. They talk about marks in his hands. They talk about marks in his feet. They're all here. They talk about it. The biggest name I like is from the Seneca. They call him East Star Man because he came down from the sky, healed the sick, raised the dead, taught them how to grow better crops. I mean, they all know about Jesus. It's everywhere. They all know about Jesus. I mean, and what's really interesting also with the Mohawks, they talk about him, and this is a good one. It took me a while to figure this one out. They talk about him sailing across a lake in a stone canoe, coming to their village. I thought about that for a long time. Why would they plug in a stone canoe? Now you got to think like an Indian. An Indian is going to know a stone canoe does not float, guys. This guy walked on water. That's how he got to our village. He came across that lake. And he walked to our village across the water. And so they put it out. He came across in a stone canoe. That's how they tell the story. And Jesus is all over Native America. It's all over. They've all got it. It'd be an insult to say it. They talk about the Great War around the Great Lakes. They talk about the war around the Great Lakes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's one thing that's been interesting to me, and kind of what I think is, I believe, I truly do believe that the stories in Central and South America, as well as the stories in North America, are talking about Christ. And I do believe that whether or not, let's say that the whole Book of Mormon happened in North America, I do believe that Christ would have visited South Central America as well, because we know that he had other sheep, and it would be silly for us to go ahead and say, hey, we have this record about him visiting the other sheep, and then say that he had no other sheep, because he says in the Book of Mormon as well that he still has more sheep to go visit. And
yeah, there's no doubt he visited Central America, and we know this because, like you said, he said, other sheep I have are not of this fold. And he went everywhere. He said, I told them in the old country, when I was told them other sheep, I was talking about you. But now I'm telling you I've got other sheep, and there are other places I have to get. He went everywhere. He went everywhere. And that's not a problem. I don't have a problem with him showing up in the Yucatan or Belize or Guatemala, anywhere. That's absolutely fine. My contention is it took place within the boundaries of the continental United States of America.
The Book of Mormon did, yeah. Okay. Well, Wayne, we could talk about this for hours. We want to raise the money to be able to fly out and spend a whole day with you, have our cameras there, see everything that you got, and like go into depth, see all the receipts of your research. And we hope to be able to do that here soon. And we also, we hope that you will take us to these places as we do the season of the docuseries we're working on, The Stick of Joseph. As we go and dig into the Heartland theory, we hope that you take us and accompany us on that journey.
A lot of compelling evidence for sure. That's awesome.
I'd love to. That'd be a lot of fun. I'd love to.
Perfect. I appreciate it. Well, I want to leave it to you at the end. I want to give you the opportunity to share your testimony of the Book of Mormon, why you believe it is the Word of God, how you feel your research has bolstered your faith, and just kind of share your testimony here at the end.
Sure. Well, I can tell you, and again, I want to stress very, very, and I did it at the beginning. Archaeology had nothing to do with my conversion to this church. I had a spiritual witness right out of the Book of Mormon. It was awesome. Like I said, I wish I could give it to my kids. It was very powerful, and it's fresh in my mind today as when it happened. And I dropped everything and jumped into the church full bore. And it wasn't until 18 years into the church that I realized that I kind of woke up, that I felt there was something amiss with the archaeology, because I was a archaeology student and I knew about Hopewell. So the whole time I'm learning about the church, I'm still doing Hopewell as a hobby. You understand? So there came to a point. And what brought me to that archaeology moment was that letter that Joseph wrote to Emma in June 4 of 1834. On the banks of the Mississippi River, we just walked across the plains of the Nephites, picking up their skulls and bones as proof of the divine authenticity of the Book of Mormon. That's Joseph's letter to Emma. When I read that 18 years into the church, my Hopewell and my Maya stuff collided big time. I mean, there was something wrong. And that's when I really started looking at archaeology. Up to that point, it was just a hobby for me. But I know that Joseph is a prophet of God. I have no doubt about him at all. I love the man. I just can't believe it. All the persecution he went through, and he didn't turn. There's not many people that strong. The guy is incredible. And his family that hung around him, and have all his original 12 apostatized except for 2. I mean, it just had to be heart-wrenching for him to see those guys, peel off one by one. Good friends, people you trusted. And I have a real love for Joseph. I love the Book of Mormon. And I read my old book here because it's laid out. It's in large print. I don't need to wear my glasses, which is awesome. So they knew I was coming when they read this. But this is my book, and I read it. I read it every day. I read a couple chapters every day, and I just keep rotating. It's just great. So, and I know that this is the church, and that Jesus is the Christ. He's the head of it. I know he walked the Americas. My Indian friends bolster that all the time when I talk to them. The special guy was here. Yeah, they don't call him Jesus. They got all kinds of names for him in their own tongue. You know, you say, well, that means Jesus. Well, it's their own tongue, and that's the way it is. But he's got marks here. He's got marks here. Marks inside. He's dressed in white. My Ho-Chunk friend Merlin one day, I said to him, I said, so tell me about this special guy. But was he a light-skinned fellow? He said, well, we don't know what color he was because he glowed so much. He had this glow around him. We don't know if he was red, yellow, or black. We have no idea. But he just glowed. And that's how my friend Merlin explained Jesus walking into Wisconsin. That's how he explained it. So that's where I'll leave it with you guys. So I know this is true, and I thank you for this time. And it's been great. This has been my job. Keep in mind, my job has been Ancient American Magazine. What I do with this archaeology stuff in the church has just been a side thing for me. I don't make my living with it. I don't want to be involved in priestcraft. Some people think, well, maybe he's priestcraft. No. I make my living with the Ancient American Magazine, excuse me, which is this. I'm in this June, I was 30 years old publishing this magazine. And it's out everywhere, California to New York. And
it's crazy.
Stuff I do in the
I need to
church,
subscribe
pretty
to
much
this.
stays focused.
I don't know what's wrong with me.
You did.
Anyone watching this, if you want to support Wayne, subscribe to
subscribe to
American Magazine.
This is my new church magazine, just on church,
Yeah.
Land of Promise. This is issue 2,
Got both of them
and
right
number
there.
3 comes out in September. That's where you need to go because it's packed, absolutely packed.
Cool.
You need to go. You need to subscribe.
Okay, I'm going to subscribe.
Thanks for this time.
So how do people find you? How would people subscribe? Is it online?
Okay.
What's the website? Please share all that.
Okay, here's the website. It's ldsarchaeology.com. That's it.
Boom.
ldsarchaeology.com, or give me a call, 715-962-1422.
Awesome.
Give me a call.
Wayne, I appreciate it. This has been amazing. I hope this is the first of many conversations, and that we can grow and learn from all your amazing work as the years go on. So